miners will go in and try to scare the wits out of villagers by pretending to look like aliens.
A grainy phone video shows villagers in the Peruvian Amazon moving through the dense rainforest at night. They whisper nervously, flashlights shaking. One man shouts, "Ahí está, ahí." The beam of light catches something, a tall, humanoid, eerily stilled, eyes glowing like a predator in the dark. Then the figure moves, almost gliding. The camera shakes and the clip cuts out. That is supposedly not a man. Deep in the Loreto region of northeastern Peru, locals are on edge. Night after night, a terrifying presence haunts the jungle. It's tall, nearly 7 feet according to people. It moves without sound. Some say it can fly, others says it tries to peel the faces of its victims. The villagers call them los pelicaras, the face peelers. These are not stories told around a fire. These are real-time reports happening in 2025, filed with police, local government, even the military. Entire communities are organizing nighttime patrols armed with flashlights, shotguns, and praying. But this isn't the first time a community has been attacked in these types of attacks. In fact, nearly an identical series of events unfolded in 1977 in Brazil during what would become one of the most terrifying UFO incidents in modern history, the Colaris attacks. And now one man, explorer and researcher Timothy Alberino, is connecting the dots from firsthand interviews in Peru to declassified military documents in Brazil and ancient tribal knowledge passed down from generations. The truth might be darker than anything we could have ever imagined. Hey guys, real quick, if you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe, and if you can't watch now, add it to your watch later playlist. Back to the video. So Timothy Alberino is not your average adventurer. He's not a YouTube chaser looking for clicks. He's a researcher, explorer, and author who spent years digging into forbidden knowledge, giants, UFOs, ancient civilizations, biblical prophecy, and the possibility of non-human entities living among us. His book, Birthright, lays out a bold thesis that Earth has always been a battleground between humans and ancient spiritual intelligences, and that these entities never truly left. They just changed tactics. Sounds crazy, but Alberino doesn't just write books from behind a desk. He goes there, boots on the ground. He's been to Peru, Bolivia, Sardinia, and the Middle East, and other regions tied to lost knowledge, megalithic ruins, and unexplained phenomena. His channel is a trove of raw footage, interviews, breakdowns, but most importantly, it's where he began talking publicly about the so-called face peelers. In a video titled "Are Aliens Attacking Indigenous People in the Amazon Jungle?" link in description, Albrino explains how reports of Loreto, out of Loreto, Peru, prompted him to investigate what locals believe were non-human attackers descending from the sky. He recounts a growing wave of strange assaults that started in mid-2023, with villagers describing attackers who were tall, wore armor, floated or flew, and attempted to abduct women and children.
Pelicara, face peeler, this is a legend that goes back decades in Peru. And she saw this person dressed head to foot in black body armor, flying on a disc.
One terrifying detail stands out. The victims' faces were partially mutilated, almost surgically. That same video dives into footage from the actual region, including clips of frightened locals giving testimony, patrolling their homes at night, and describing the attackers in chilling detail. But Alberino doesn't stop at face value. On podcasts like Blurry Creatures and The Higher Side, the Michael Knowles and Sean Ryan, he goes into depth how these attacks are connected to ancient history, the Nephilim, and government cover-ups. Crazy. According to him, these are not isolated incidents, but they're part of a bigger picture. So who is Timothy Alberino? He's a modern-day Indiana Jones with a Bible in his hand and a flashlight in the other. And right now, he believes the Amazon rainforest is the front line for something far more bigger than we've ever seen before. Okay, so the first reports of the face peelers came from San Antonio de Pintoyaku, a remote village surrounded by dense, humid jungle. It's kind of like the place where outsiders rarely go. No paved roads, no electricity, just tradition and now fear. The attacks began in early 2023, according to local legends. The Iquitu people, an indigenous Amazonian group, began reporting repeated nighttime sightings of tall figures in dark armor, floating just above the jungle floor, gliding silently under the cover of night. The villagers tried to remain calm at first, but then came the screams. The attack of Segundo Rojas on the night of July 29th, things escalated. Villagers say one of the face peelers attacked a young girl, attempting to carry her away. She screamed, alerting the community. A chase broke out. Hours later, a man named Segundo Rojas chaos. Reportedly, a 28-year-old farmer was found slumped and unconscious, with his face partially removed. His skin had been peeled downward, exposing jaw muscles and bone, yet oddly, there was no blood pooling or spatter, kind of a classic sign in these unexplained mutilation cases. So local reports conflicted. Some say Rojas died shortly after, others say he survived but was forever changed, psychologically broken. We don't know because these areas are so remote and we have yet to get follow-up on that specifically. So in his September 2023 video, Timothy Albrino traveled to Pukalpa in Loreto, filming interviews with villagers who described what they saw. So Alberino notes how locals formed night patrol groups armed with 12-gauge shotguns and machetes, many not trained, so they had to be trained by him and some friends. One tribal elder says even the dogs won't bark anymore when they show up. It's like the animals feel it first, something very not natural. So they reported to the government and the people. What is their response? They came up with the illegal miner theory. So the Peru's National Police made headlines when they claimed these attackers were illegal gold miners using drones, night vision, and jetpacks to scare villagers off resource-rich land. They suggested the attackers were part of Los Gallegos, a violent Venezuelan cartel-linked operation. So Timothy made sure when he was there to investigate and ask questions to see whether that was true or not. And here's what they found. Villagers were saying no drone can move like that. One man says on camera they disappear into the sky. They can see in the dark. They're faster than anything we've seen. So from these testimonials, it became clear that it was not. So the local government alarmed. Even Alto Nania's mayor, Jose Human, admitted he didn't believe the illegal miner explanation. In interviews with La Repubblica, he called on the Peruvian Navy and military for help. It got to that scale. According to the article, it's translated that these beings are armored and they float. The people are terrified. This is no longer a local matter. We need national security to intervene, according to the mayor. So now let's look at the indigenous interpretation. It's ancient jungle spirits or sky people. The Iquitu people and other Amazonian tribes have myths that go back hundreds of years involving sky visitors who abduct humans, often during spiritual transgression or cosmic cycles. So one elder told Albrino that these creatures resemble the Pishtaco, a legendary figure in Peruvian folklore that steals fat, organs, and faces from victims. According to local legend, Pishtacos are often white-skinned outsiders with advanced tools, mirroring the face peeler description eerily well. In interviews with some villagers, they claim that though these attackers were gringos with strange weapons, but changed their mind when they saw them glide silently into the trees or sky. So based on Alberino's observation, he said if these were just cartel thugs or illegal miners, they couldn't come back every night. They wouldn't mutilate faces and they certainly wouldn't fly.
This was happening, by the way, in various villages. This was not the only village.
Yeah, there were. Ask, has this been happening anywhere else?
This was happening in various villages in Alto Nanay, in that region of Peru, and in other regions of the Peruvian Amazon. Reports of the face peelers were surfacing everywhere.
So as of late of 2023, the face peeler activity appeared to have slowed, possibly due to the increased military patrols in the region. But the villagers remained on edge. Night still brings fear, and the strange lights in the jungle sky, they're still seen, just not as often. But one question remains. If these aren't just stories, then what are they preparing for? So after the first reports of the flying armored beings started to hit Peruvian news outlets in late July 2023, panic began to spread throughout the Alto Nania region. That's when the official explanation arrived. According to the Peruvian National Police, the mysterious jungle attackers were not aliens or sky beings, but illegal gold miners, possibly members of Los Gallegos Venezuelan gang. Their alleged motive: to scare indigenous villagers off ancestral lands. This theory was echoed by Vice Admiral Alberto Alcala of the Peruvian Navy, who claimed in an interview that small gold mine gangs had developed advanced tactics to avoid detection. But when you listen to the villagers, the pieces don't quite add up. Alberino's rebuttal is that makes no sense. In his video breakdown, Timothy Albrino and his friend that was down there carefully walked through the terrain, logistics, and reported behavior of these entities. The conclusion? The miner theory collapses under its own weight. But here's where it doesn't make much sense: the terrain and the accessibility. The villages being attacked, like San Antonio and Nueva Esperanza, are deep in the jungle, accessible only by boat or days-long hike. Getting there with jetpacks or heavy drones is just unlikely. It's almost impossible without a full logistics team. If the goal was intimidation, why mutilate faces? Why leave victims behind? No gold, no resources, no clear motive, no sound, and no no jet noises reported over and over. Jetpacks, even advanced ones, are still loud. Maybe not unless it's DARPA. Go check out that video. Yet villagers consistently report total silence even when the beings hover or fly directly above them. So villagers have fired shotguns at these intruders. Not a scratch. The beings either absorbed the shots or vanished midair. One person said the bullets passed through them like they were made of light or smoke. The other thing is, no cartel thug's gonna risk days of jungle travel to keep spooking remote villagers. So according to Albrino, the minor explanation fits a very familiar pattern, one used over and over again in modern UFO history. They create a rational sounding cover story to shut down media attention and label local witnesses as confused or crazy. It's worked before. Look at Roswell in 1947. A UFO crash became a, quote, weather balloon. In Colaris, Brazil in 1977, victims were burned by, quote, UFOs, and they were dismissed as hallucinating fishermen. In Skinwalker Ranch incidents, the government blamed cattle disease, despite surgical mutilations and no blood. In each of these cases, the public explanation seemed more like a patch job than a real investigation. So were the attackers miners using cutting-edge gear, or was this just a convenient way to close the case? Because if the authorities know it's not miners, then what are they really trying to hide? And more importantly, who else knows? So long before the face peelers appeared in the jungles of Peru, something terrifying was already happening across the border in Brazil. The year was 1977. This is the Colaris attacks, and I'm gonna go into detail. It's a small, quiet fishing village located in the state of Para, near the Amazon Delta. Something emerged in the skies and, quote, began hurting people. Light and burn victim residents reported seeing strange flying crafts, often small, brightly lit, and completely silent, appear at night. The crafts hovered over homes and fields before unleashing beams of intense light that would burn, paralyze, or knock victims unconscious. These weren't fleeting encounters. They happened night after night, and the injuries? Very real. Some victims had puncture wounds, others had significant blood loss, and many experienced debilitating fatigue for weeks after. One of the sources, Jacques Vallée, one of the most well-credited UFO investigators, he described from what locals said was drained of vitality and found that victims lost large amounts of red blood cells as if they were being harvested. Medical reports, laser-like wounds and blood extraction. The town's doctor, Dr. Welaida Sacim Carvalho, treated dozens of victims, mostly women, who came in with burn marks, high radiation symptoms, and emotional trauma. Some were so badly shaken, they wouldn't speak. Others said the light sucked the life from them. So from this interview, I'm gonna quote what it says in Portuguese. It says the lights would hit their chest or head. The skin was burned, but the strange part was the blood. It was like it disappeared, like something had removed it carefully. So eventually, the reports got so bad that the Brazilian Air Force launched an official investigation called Operation Saucer. So from late 1977 into early 1978, the military deployed officers to interview locals, photograph UFOs, and record activity. Their conclusion? Something was happening, and it wasn't just hysteria. Military personnel reported seeing metallic discs, strange beings, and lights that responded to their presence. After several close encounters, the operation was abruptly shut down, and much of it remained classified for over 2 decades. So over 1,000 pages, hundreds of witness testimonies, and photographic evidence of crafts in the sky. So how does this mirror the face peeler case? Let me explain. The Colaris incident has 5 eerie parallels to the events in Peru. Remote, isolated location. Just like Loreto, Colaris was cut off from major cities. No media noise, no interference. Nighttime aerial attacks. Beings came at night using beams of light or unknown energy to incapacitate victims. Blood and tissue was removed. Victims in both places report injuries without blood, consistent with surgical precision. Targeting of women and children in both cases. These female villagers were disproportionately targeted, possibly for biological reasons. Military suppression, and in both Brazil and Peru, military responses seem more interested in silencing than solving. So Albrino on the Blurry Creature podcast draws a straight line between Operation Saucer and the face peeler behavior. The Colaris case may be decades old, but it was never resolved. And if these jungle intruders are part of the same phenomenon, it means they're not just returning, they never left. And before I made this video, I reached out to my good friend James Fox to ask if he had ever heard of the face peelers, and he directed me to the Colaris case. So by late 2023, Timothy Alberino had seen and heard enough to take action. While media outlets debated miners versus aliens, Albrino got on the phone and headed straight into the Peruvian Amazon to find out for himself. What he captured on video wasn't a spectacle, it was a warning and quite eerie, to say the least. His investigation began in Pukalpa, the small city along the Ucayali River that serves as the last true outpost before you enter the dense interior of the Amazon. From there, he traveled by boat and foot to the communities most affected: San Antonio de Pintoyaku, Nueva Esperanza, and Alto Nanay. In his full video, he walks you through day one all the way through to his encounters in the interview, so I highly recommend you go check it out. So on camera, Albrino speaks with the tribal elders, women, and young men. They're all visibly shaken. They're all holding shotguns. They look like they were traumatized. Their words are very blunt, raw, and consistent. One man says, "It came down with light, not a light we know, like a soft green glow. My brother shot at it and it kept coming." Another villager recounts the night a girl was grabbed by one of the beings. This is the most known count because she was 15 years old and supposedly she screamed and they dropped her, but her face, it was already torn, like someone took the skin and peeled it. A woman describes walking up to something outside her hut, breathing, heavily watching. When her husband ran out, he saw a tall figure floating just above the ground. So now I'm going to tell the story of the most famous incident of the face peelers, and that is of Talia. And this is all from the account of Timothy Alberino. You can see the full video where he goes into depth about it, and I'll do my best to regurgitate what I know. So apparently it was at dusk, and it was at this time that Talia was in the backyard on a hilltop. And the house that she lives in was further down, and all her family was on the front side of the house where there's the main road. And she was in the back, fenced in, and she was picking up leaves, picking fruit. And mind you, this is dusk. And it was at this moment that she felt a gust of wind behind her, and she was bent over. And what ended up happening next is she lifted up and she looked down to the hill, and she saw a very tall figure, something taller than 7 foot apparently, wearing black body armor, black helmet, everything, on a hover sort of craft, gliding up the hill towards her. She's kind of in a state of shock, not sure what to do at this moment. And as the being gets closer to her, the being ends up grabbing her and putting his hand on her mouth so that way she can't scream. And it was at this moment she started to panic. Talia then is not sure what's going on, and then she can see from the hillside down again, there was another figure, just as tall, black body armor as well, hovering right at them. And at this point, she's able to infer something. She hears the first person that grabbed her, the tall being, is speaking English. So that person has been referred to as the Gringo. The second person has a Peruvian accent, so they call him the Peruvian being, face peeler. Peruvian face peeler and the Gringo face peeler. And it's at this moment that the one that just came up the hill, the Peruvian face peeler, grabbed her legs. And when they grabbed her legs and they have her mouth and arms, she's unable to do anything. And they're still on their crafts. It was at this moment they decided to move her down closer to another hut where they can't be seen. And this is where it gets really weird. Apparently, one of the face peelers pulls out some powder in his hand and has some foamy cream. And then the other hand, they pull out a syringe and they put the syringe up Talia's nose. And you can see in the video, she's visibly shaken. She's distraught. She's back to the site where this traumatic event happened. And that should tell you a lot in terms of how she feels about this whole thing, that this isn't some fabricated story. And they put whatever thing was in the syringe, they put up her nose. And as they put up her nose, they then start to apply the foam and cream to the face. And it's at that point that one of the face peelers says, "Hey, don't apply too much." She hears the words, "If you apply too much, the skin will stick to the flesh," implying this story of the folklore of the face peelers. And it's at that moment when they're applying the cream, she's completely compromised. She can't do anything. She literally, her legs are tied up by the guy holding them, and then her arms are put behind and her mouth is covered. And it's then when one of them pulls out, which they infer, Timothy Albrino and his buddy there, that they think it's a laser scalpel, which is then been put on her side of her neck here, of her chin. And they start to create an incision, implying that they're trying to most likely remove the face. It was at this moment that Talia, her bravery, she starts to panic and move more, and she grabs the head of the person behind her with the black helmet. This is the Gringo, and starts to lift it. It was at this moment that the other face peeler smacks her. And it was in this moment of kind of going back and forth in this tug of war that they drop Talia. And when they drop Talia, it gives her a split-second moment to then scream. It's at this moment that her family in the front of the house then retreats back to see what's going on. And from the visual account of her brother, father, mother, and some other witnesses, they look up to the hill and they see these tall figures, taller than close to 7 foot tall, black body armor on these hoverboards. And they can verbally hear the Peruvian say to the Gringo, "We need to get out of here." And the Gringo at that moment replies, "No, we can't leave her." And they try to grab her. And as they're trying to grab her, they're unable to. And then they're all starting to scream and run up the hill, that they decide to then get to a point where they lift off high enough from the tree line and bolt out of there. And that is the witness account of what happened to Talia in the village. Hey guys, that concludes part 1. Part 2 will be out in the next week. Thank you already. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe. And I'll leave you here with the trailer to expect for what's coming next. Glowing eyes or light source, silent movement or hovering, attempted abduction or mutilation. These are not the marks of petty criminals. These are the tactics of something else that we really don't know. He goes on to say he's not inferring that these are quote unquote aliens. It's just we're not sure what it is. So when you hear the stories about strange beings flying over jungles, abducting villagers, and peeling off faces, the first word that comes to mind is aliens. But Timothy Albrino thinks that explanation is too simple. In his book Birthright, his interviews, and nearly every podcast appearance he's done, Albrino has made it clear these entities might not come from another planet. They may have been here all along.